Welcome to the Sparky Coach podcast. This platform was built by Sparkies for Sparkies. We simply exist to make business owners more profitable, or businesses more profitable and more predictable. So we want to work with people that work hard because we love working hard too, that work smart because you got to be on top of the business, people that are kind because no one likes a dickhead. Am I right? People who want results because that's what we're here for, right? And people who want to be part of a like-minded community. So if you're interested in hearing more about the platform, please reach out and enjoy the podcast. Sparky Coach Pod Lounge featuring Cam. I'm going to start this with a bit of Fleetwood Mac. If you live to see the seven wonders. What are we talking about? Apprentices. One of the seven wonders, maybe the eighth wonder of the world is, how do I pay my apprentice? Is it the multi-purpose rate? Is it the rate? How far do they travel? What if they travel for 2 kilometers and get out of that car into the next car and travel a kilometer on a bike, and they get off that bike onto an e-bike, and they get onto a skateboard, onto a scooter, into job form, into the moon, back into your job notes, and all of a sudden you're staring down the barrel of owing someone money, and you're like, what happened here? So I want to reference this to my story. I remember, look, Let's preface this by saying we are not Fair Work. So CC, no English here, right? Just double check the facts. We'll try the best to give an overarching fair appraisal of the whole thing. But on that,
break it down.
I don't even know if I can say this, but like the Nika and Fair Work, like Nika and MEA, why wouldn't you just call Fair Work about this? They just I was so confused about Tanika and MEA's offerings that I'm like, why wouldn't you were just Fair Work? Like you would just call, and a lot of times they direct you to Fair Work. And I'm like, well, this is a waste of money. And everyone's a finalist anyway. If I apply for an award, this thing needs an overhaul. This is not the podcast.
Incoming.
It is, Anyway, super interesting because I remember getting to a point where I had underpaid my apprentices, 2 of them, not deliberately. So I remember realizing it, and they were mature ages, and I think I didn't get the travel fare allowance wrong. I got the rate wrong. When the rates went up, I just wasn't on top of it. And this is a big highlight to outsourcing your admin and having the right processes in place. And how do you put the right processes in place? Most people, like myself, you get it wrong, and then you put a process in place. It's like, well, I want that to happen again. Like someone called me the other day, were driving around an unregistered vehicle, and now I've got a process in place. So yeah, for a psycho. So anyway, and I just basically called him. I've underpaid you. You're not getting your money. It's my money now. I spent it. I called him and I was like, this is what's happened. And I backdated it. I think it was like, it wasn't dramatic. I remember it being like $1,500 for each person. Like it was only relatively recent. It was highly illegal. And I remember just going, so sorry it's happened. And we had someone who shall remain nameless just this week reach out on that same thing. And multiple people recently have reached out about the apprentice confusion, about, there's obviously, going to go off the top of my head here, I love your input, industry allowance. It's apprentice's base rate. And then there's an industry allowance, there's a tool allowance, there's a fare allowance, and there's a travel allowance that need to be on top of that base rate, not to be confused with the multi-purpose rate, which seems to include all those things, which I even feel like you're still not safe on the multi-purpose rate without double checking. But over to Cam.
Yeah, so I just want to sort of clarify this. It's been a topic of conversation for probably a solid couple of months now with a few members. And I think it's just a confusion, if I'm being honest. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say it's the most straightforward piece of, I guess it's a award writing legislation document, whatever you want to do. It's the law. That's the reality of it all. So it's set. So if it doesn't meet that criteria, you're breaking the law, basically. I don't want to sugarcoat it here, but I don't want to scare anyone either, but I just want to bring some awareness to it. Because I think there is an element of confusion around it, which is totally understandable. So first thing I want to address is there's the base weekly rate. So that base weekly rate is for 38 hours. So I think I want to highlight that. It's for 38 hours, and we'll come back on the hours in a moment. So that's a base weekly rate for 38 hours. Then there is a electrician's license allowance, a tool allowance, and an industry allowance. Those three allowances are just made up of percentages of what the base level allowance would be for a tradesman. So apprentice wages and that are just a percentage of what the award trade wage is. Now, in regards to the tool allowance, it stays the same the whole way through, from first year to fourth year, whether you're mature age or not, or just completed year 12 or not completed year 12. The electrician's license and the industry allowance, they're the ones that are incrementally percentiled against it. So when those three allowances get added together, they then equal what's commonly known as the all-purpose weekly rate. So they get sort of combined together with your base weekly rate, and you get an all-purpose rate, which often is seen as, hey, this is what the all-purpose hourly rate is per hour, which most people work off like, hey, it's 17, it's 20, it's 21, it's 25, it's 24, it's 27, whatever it ends up being. That's where the all-purpose rate comes into it. Now, the two areas on top of this, or two additional allowances on top of this, is where a lot of people, I think, have some misconceptions and get caught out on. So the first one is what is known as your time travel per day. So I like to call this essentially the turn up allowance. It can be a little bit misleading with the travel time per day allowance, but that's what it's technically called under Fair Work. I like to call it the turn up. It is paid to employees on each day that they present themselves for work, and also paid on RDOs. So really important that if they turn up, they get paid to turn up, a travel time allowance. Now, I'll verbatim this. It's percentiled as well, whether you're first, second, third, or fourth year. Starts at $4.65 for a first year apprentice, and then goes up to about $7.36 for a mature age in there. Now, I'll address the mature age and the just standard apprentice in a second. Now, the second allowance here that we want to look at is what they call a start, end, or finish on job allowance. Now, this is probably a bit of an ambiguous one that some people are unaware of or get a little bit confused around. So, this is based around whether the employee is using their vehicle to start and finish on the job, or whether the employer is offering to provide the transport free of charge from the workshop or the employee's home. Now, if you're starting and finishing on site, so you're directing your apprentice to be like, hey, buddy, we're working down here at, Smith Street Herring Bar, for example, or wherever it is, and they're starting and finishing on site, it's a flat $27.52 allowance per day, which roughly adds, it's about $3.50-ish, give or take a little bit per hour across a standard day. About between $3.50 to $4 per hour. The other one is the employer offering to provide the transport free of charge. So if they're getting collected, if they're getting picked up, if they're meeting at the workshop or whatever it is, it's a $4.94 allowance per day. Now, on top of this, and we'll go a little bit in depth in here because it can be a little bit confusing as well. On top of this, right, there's the 50K allowance, right? So if you're traveling further than 50 kilometers from the workshop as such, or designated place of employment, so the address from the place of employment, once that 50K clicks in, and this is 50Ks as the crow flies, it's not 50Ks going round and round roundabouts and up and down and that, it's 50Ks as the crow fly. Once that 50K kicks in, there is a travel allowance in regarding to time that they get paid, which is paid at ordinary rates. And it's a minimum of a 15-minute payment. So if they went 53 kilometers, for example, they are entitled to a 15-minute payment on top of that. And that is just paid at ordinary time. And this applies to all of your staff. So it doesn't matter who they are. It's the 50K travel on top of it. Now, I'll probably go backwards a couple of steps here. Is there anything that doesn't make sense there, Crowe, or probably didn't explain?
No, I was just going to clarify. That makes sense about the multi-purpose rate being in the licensed tool industry and the other one. I've forgotten whatever that one was.
So your base weekly rate, and then you got your electrician tool and industry allowance.
Yeah. So I think my question, to double back on it, the hours, if someone's 38 hours, and then if you pay 40, those extra 2 are at time and a half. Is that correct? Yeah. So if you're paying 40 hours, it's 38 normal hours, and then 2 at the time and a half.
Yep.
Also, to double back on that, in an overtime sense, overtime, if someone goes nitty gritty on that whole thing, if you do your 15-hour Monday or 12-hour Monday, then 2 are at time and a half, 2 are at double time. So you've got to make sure you're paying the correct amount of time and a half and double time, unless your contract specifies other, but specifically for apprentices. And then I think a lot of people run low key businesses. Like, if you work 3 12-hour days and a 4-hour day, I'll give you a Friday off and bits and pieces. And I think I just want to highlight the overarching comment is you can do whatever you want, really, but everything's cool till it's not cool. Like, everything's cool till someone is at a barbecue in 5 years' time. This person owes me this, and there's a class action. So just like, you always want to be above reproach. So I always paid my apprentices 10% above the award. That was a bit strategic because I was like, if the rate goes up, I'm probably still covered at that point as well.
Still covered.
And in the coming from Sydney, we never really traveled more than the 50K thing wasn't a thing. Like, really, you're traveling, and if you were, it's so minuscule that no one's ever gonna fight about that, as far as I knew. But I can't remember what's the $30 one. Is it the fare allowance or the travel allowance?
Yeah. So the $27.52 one is the travel. Also, it's technically called start, end, or finish on job allowance per day.
Yeah, so I used to pay that regardless of if the apprentices were the tradie in our car or drove to site, because to me
it halfway or like at the wholesaler or whatever. Yeah,
I looked at it from a distance and I was like, this could get grey area. This is a massive grey area that someone could fight me on in the future. I also was super conscious, and I don't think it was 27 when I was doing it. It was like 20 to 22 or something like that, 20, say. So I remember being about $100 extra a week. I'm like, I don't want my apprentice budgeting to earning $700 a week when he might get 7 on 640 and 660. So even on TAFE days, doesn't matter what day. I think TAFE days you have to pay it anyway. But even on personal days, I was just like, And I think I even overpaid to the point of paying it in annual leave, which looking back is a bit silly. And definitely looking back, you can get extremely organized with this, but it's someone's job to make sure that you are above reproach on that as well. So my biggest fear was the apprentice's wage going from 600 to 700 or 800 to 900 and fluctuating in there, and they were unsure of how to cover rent, food, groceries, pokies. I'm joking. Don't.
Naughty.
I will highlight my little boy the other day. He goes, like, we walk past in Mullum Golf Club or Bruns Golf Club, and he's like, what are those people doing on that machine? Is it a fun game? And I was like, that's actually not a fun game. That machine's programmed to take your money. And he's like, we've got to tell them. We've got to tell them what they're doing. So guys, pokies, stay away.
Yes.
Anyway, we digress.
Public service,
we digress. So yeah, continue.
So couple of things here is I don't think anyone maliciously is doing this or deliberately doing it. As far as everyone I've spoken to recently, a lot of it was just a misunderstanding or I'm paying slightly above the award wage, so I'm covered on that. So to probably address that, I guess that common sort of thought process is that the only way you would be above reproach in that instance is if you you put together all of the entitlements and all of the travel time and start and finish on site allowances, and combine them together. And if your all-purpose wage or above award wage that you're paying them is above that, yeah, cool, you're above it. No one I've seen is above that, because by the time you multiply it all across. So I think you need to have a look at one other thing as well. And I think this is where sometimes some people get caught out as well, is that I just get everyone to come to the office, and then that way I don't have to pay the start and finish on site allowance. But if you're getting everyone to the office, there is a technical side of it with Fair Work, is that that's when they're actually starting work. So you're then starting to pay wages from the moment. So if you're traveling, then so you're actually paying the wages on top of that as well. So I think you need to have a look at how you operate your business first and foremost. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you how you need to do that, or how you should do it, because every business is different and every business has a different way of doing things. But I think one thing that I guess Crowe and I can definitely, I guess, say we see a lot of is the efficiencies within people's businesses. So I think first and foremost, put aside the dollar value and the cost associated with it, and what we're required to do is, are you actually being efficient in the way that you're running your business? So if you're going from job A to job B to job C 3 days in that, or across the whole week, and bouncing around between them, why couldn't you just be at job A for 2 days, job B for 2 days, and finish job C on the last day of the week? So there can be underlying issues here around the efficiency, which is, I guess, can be causing like a hamstring. You're like, oh, but like it's doing this, it's doing that. But I just think you need to look at it in a simplistic way. And this is where, like, if you're particularly doing a little bit of project work, or there's whole day jobs that you're doing, it's a whole day job. Like, get organized so that you're spending the whole day there, so it's efficient, so that you're not having to pack up and clean up. Like, simple things like just unpacking everything and then packing everything up more than is needed can add a considerable amount of time. Because if you're going to a job for multiple days, there's an element of a few things that you can leave on site, like that you can be comfortably be like, I'm okay to leave those few things there. I don't have to take everything back to the vehicle, depending on how secure it is and all those sorts of bits and pieces. But so I'm going to say no one's probably deliberately doing it, but we definitely want to be looking at how you can be efficient around it all. Now, when do rates go up? Rates go up 1st of July every year for the last 20, I don't know, however long it's been around for. From the moment I've been in the industry, it goes up every year. So that's when they go up for your apprentices. It gets released. It's just a percentage increase that's set by Fair Work and moved up. What the 38-hour part as well. So being aware of that, and I know, Crowe, you touched on it there. So if you are working the 40 hours, it is going to have to be an additional 2 hours at time and a half. Now, again, not going to sit here and tell you how to run your business or anything like that. But I'm just going to give you some ways that different people do it that we know of. So there is
I would just come back to one thing for a sec there. A couple of recent examples, two that I can think of. This member, I was talking the other day, and I was like, why are you aren't getting all your hours in? And this is like the labor efficiency side of things, which is paid versus allocated hours. When you start to measure, you can see people jump from job to job to job to job. So it makes you, what you said before, the most important job is the one you're at. So you should stay there and finish it. If it's something to do, you should do it, and then you should leave. And not always possible. With a larger team, it should be very possible, because you'll have floaters that go around and just do stuff, the stuff that comes up. But if you're by yourself and there's an emergency call out, well, who do you send? Me. There's no one else to send. So the smaller the crew, the harder that is. But you should be doing the best you can without feeling pressure from everybody. On that, I was just chatting to we're going through, and he was bouncing around a lot, and then he was like, oh, yeah, I leave the vans at our house. So the tradie drives, picks up the van, and then we pay them from site, and the travel they start paying them from the office, which is their house basically, and they drive, and it takes 20 to 40 minutes to get to every job site, and they pay the return trip as well because you got to drop the van back. And I'm like, you're literally losing at least an hour every single day for a tradie apprentice team on a standard charge out. That's $200 an hour, right? It's $1,000 a week. It's $50,000 a year, all because they were trying to save this person driving the 45 minutes home for petrol. And I'm like, you're literally trying to save $3,000 to $5,000 and you're losing $50,000. And it's not, and when you talk about in a money sense across the year, across the week, you can sort of, extra $100 here. Across the year, it really adds up. But also, anyone who's been on a job site for full days before, there is a significant difference between 6.5 and 8 hours. If you're roughing in and you get full days, 8 hours, or doing any task, full day, 8 hours, there's a huge difference between 5.8s and, and 6.5s. Huge difference. Efficiency, tools out. If you're running a project, it's same crew, consecutive days, stay till you're finished. like forget about it, and so just the inefficiencies. And it wasn't until we were like, wait, that doesn't make sense, and oh my gosh, I hadn't realized that. So it's so interesting on that thing. Another situation there is chatting to someone recently. I don't want to name a suburb because it'd be obvious where the person's from. So let's just say the office was 40 minutes away. So this person the apprentice lived in a town where the job was. Was that clear? Yes.
Yes.
Apprentice lived in a town where the job was, or like a couple of Ks from the job. The office was 40 minutes. So the apprentice had been just driving to site 2 kilometers, 4 minutes, whatever. And then he's basically said, oh, hey, you guys didn't pay me the $27 a day. I drove my own car to site. And then I spoke to the business owner who was like, this is ridiculous. Throwing bananas like Donkey Kong, right? And it wasn't quite that bad, but just going, what the hell? And I was like, it's like I could turn around to him and say, cool, get to the tradie's house, like we'll pick you up or whatever. And that's probably the smart around, pick up. But it's like, you don't think that people are going to be unreasonable because the guy's traveling 2 kilometers. And like, technically he's got a point. If he drives his own vehicle to site, you owe him an extra $120, $135, whatever that is, a week. Yeah. Like that, he has a point. So it's just good to be aware that, and this is at some point there's a governing body, a document, basically a contract, a fair work contract. No matter what you put in your contract, if it doesn't supersede the fair work contract always takes hold. So you can put whatever you want. I'm like, Cam, you need to work 100 hours this week. Crowe, you need to do 100. It's cool. Until fair work come, and then crack the whip. Like, what the hell? So it's like, no matter what you put in, you need to be either matching or superseding their standards, which is interesting. Anyway, so I say all that to say, you can mitigate these things, but it's this kind of stuff, if your finger's off the pulse on, you can get really caught. So if you've got 10 apprentices that go through and you underpay $4,000 each over 5 years, what is pretty simple, $100 a week turns into like a $200,000 mistake. So it's just as the efficiencies are credited, so if we earn that extra $100 a week, that's $5,000 a year. If you're missing paying someone, or something's gone wrong, and the efficiencies, they work against you as well. It's the incremental effect of making bad decisions or underpaying someone $100 a week. You might not notice, but in 5 years' time, when there's been 10 of them, you're gonna notice that bill. So just finger right on the pulse, and I think it's slowing down to speed up. You don't want to be in that position. Anyway, I digress from what you were saying.
No, that's all valid. So then I probably just wanted to touch on, there's a few things I want to touch on here, but one of them is the 38-hour week or 40-hour week, whatever people determine. So I just want to give you some ideas of different ways that can be done. So there is just that you do 40 hours a week and you get paid time and a half. That's the 2 hours at time and a half. To me, that's the most simplistic way to go about it and approach it. It's 8 hours. We start at this time, we finish at this time. It's done and dusted. Other ways that people have, you can approach it is they do 2 breaks a day. So they have one break paid and one break unpaid, which then essentially equals 7.6 hours for the day. So 7.6 hours multiplied out across the day, across the week, sorry, then equals your 38 hours. Another way that a lot of people can look at it as well is you accrue that time in RDOs. So you're basically accruing 2 hours a week. So you're getting paid for 38, accruing 2 hours, and so on and so forth. Another way that people look at it is they do 8 hours Monday to Thursday and then do a shorter day on Friday. So do 6 hours on Friday to get to the 38 hours. So they're just some examples of ways that can be looked at. I've always been of the... You go.
You might not know the answer to this. No, I don't know the answer to this. If they do 4 10-hour days, is the 9th and 10 hour at time and a half?
So technically, no. So the 40 hours in the week can be made up of whatever hours they need to be made up at, as long as it's essentially... I don't know the exact wording around this, but basically as long as it's known and essentially structured, so to speak. So it's reasonably expected.
Yeah, it makes sense if it's like your ordinary working hours were 7 till 5.
Yep.
And then you have made up your 40 hours within that 7 till 5. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so technically as well, so that's the 10-hour one is another one. And then the other one I was going to go on is there is the technical side of it is like your ordinary hours can be made up of a shorter week. So... But those things would need to be communicated and discussed prior. So, like, if like, say you're like, hey guys, we've got this big job, we're just going to do 12, 12, and what's that? Or we're going to, whatever it is, over 3 days, we're going to do 40 hours to get it done. It's like, and then we're just going to have the rest of the week off. And so you could pay that at the ordinary time, but this is a bit of a gray area around the ordinary hours of time and stuff like that. But yeah, so there is the 10, 10, 10, the 4-day work week is a really common one. That you would do 10 hours across 4 days and you get your 48 hours in. You get your 40 hours in for the week. It's all ordinary pay.
Yeah, we used to do a 7 till 3, which we called an 8-hour day, because in every 8-hour day, you get a half-hour unpaid and a 15-minute paid break.
Correct.
So if we finished at 3, they had a 15-minute paid break. That was really 7 till 3 was really 7 till 3:15, at that point. And then a lot of times they were going, my rule was like, want to be at the beach or with the kids at 4. That's the overarching goal of the whole thing. But you can skin the cat however you sort of want, as long as it's under wraps. But I think the biggest thing is the apprentice misunderstanding of the fare allowance.
Yeah.
So what happens if they drive to the tradie's house? Let's say they live near the tradie and they drive 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and they go in the van with them to site.
Yeah. Look, that's a bit of a grey area. I think if you looked at it like technically, the way the legislation is written is the employer offers to provide transport free of charge from the workshop or employee's home. So essentially they would need to be collected from home or the workshop. Now, I think the way I look at it is that anyone that's going to be fair and reasonable, they can have a fair and reasonable discussion. If you're a fair and reasonable human being, you're going to have a fair and reasonable discussion with them. Look, the way I've always approached it is I look at it one of two ways. Is the tradie who has the company vehicle, they've earned the right to have that company vehicle through time in the industry, their experience, and their ability to work and deliver for you as a business. So they have the overriding say, is the way I look at it, in regards to what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. Now, it is then up to the apprentice to have a conversation with whoever they're working with and come up with a fair and reasonable, allocation of, hey, I'm happy to meet you here, I'm happy to do this, or I'm happy to do that. Now, look, I've worked with heaps of guys who are, heaps of tradies who are more than happy to swing by somewhere and pick them up. And I've also met heaps of tradies who are more than fair and reasonable to be like, hey, meet me here and meet me this location and I'll go the rest of the way. I operate in a similar sense to you in that our guys just get paid the $27.52 essentially regardless. I personally look at coming to the workshop as poison in the sense of that it can just lose so many hours so quickly. It evaporates the time, and it creates inefficiencies. And I think it adds unnecessary time to someone's day, is probably the way I look at it. So often they have to start earlier to be able to be like, oh, hey, we say your normal start time is 7. It's like, oh, can we meet here at this time? And if your normal finish time would be 3, so to speak, or 3:30, somewhere like that, oh, hey, then we got to go back, because you don't want to shrink the hours on site. So you don't want to be like, oh, hey, we're just going to get a 6-hour day in and have 2 hours of travel.
It's interesting because in an aircon solar world, you don't really have that luxury. Like, people have to come back to the office because that's where the panels are for tomorrow's job, or the units are for tomorrow's job. That's where the trailer's loaded up. So, it's such an interesting discussion that has no end, really, in a way. So it just goes to show you the importance of just someone being on top of this. Like, how do you minimize downtime, and how do you maximize the return on investment that is paying for someone else's labor? I will highlight this. I don't want to name names. It wasn't my company, but it's very relatable to everyone. I remember there was this 3rd or 4th year that, I think it was a 4th year, that the boss put in a van. And the boss put in a van, and it was, so I got a van, maybe there's a bow around it, maybe there's not, right? Maybe there's a bobbing person on the dash, maybe there's not, whatever. So anyway,
one of those wooden taxi driver seats, remember those ones? Like the beads? Maybe there's one of them in there.
So maybe there's dice on the mirror, maybe there's not. So he gets a van and a petrol card. And then, all good, so stoked, we're so happy for you, this is the future, blah, blah. And his pay goes down $140 a week. Or what is it, $137?
It's $140.
So his pay, he's like, was getting paid $800, $900. Now it's $140 less. So he goes and complains. He's like, what the, like, I've got a van, thanks, but I'm getting paid a lot less. Like, what happened? You made a mistake. It's like, no, I didn't. Actually, we're supplying the van and the petrol card. You're not driving your own car to site anymore. So it's 5 by $27. You can wave goodbye, and they're coming back into it. So it's so interesting. And it's like, from the apprentices side, you can be like, they're not probably, no apprentice I know is looking at their $700 or $1,000, whatever it is, and being like, oh, $20 is this, and $4 is this, and $3 is this. If I do 3 of these, I get this, and I get one, I get that. They're often a bit disorganized and disheveled in the money side of things. So you've really got to make that known and make that aware. And it's very, very hard to give someone, even as legal as it is in that sense, it's very hard to give someone less money for doing the same thing. Like, it's really, really difficult. So that's interesting. Hey, question for you. With the tool allowance, I know you can't. What can you do there? Can you, like, is the best way to have a list of expected tools at first year, second year, third year? Because they're going to get, $1,000 a year, give or take, something for 4 years. There's $4,000 of tools that essentially we're paying you to get. I mean, most apprentices will have spent way over that at the end of their first year, the $4,000 even. By the time you get a couple of ladders, Makita kit or Milwaukee kit or whatever you're into these days, radio, a couple of batteries and some hand tools, like, it's probably it at that point. You probably suffice your 4 years earnings. Yeah. So what is my understanding is you can't make them spend that.
Can't make them do anything with it, no.
Yeah.
You can't make them. I think that where that comes in is setting the expectations from the get-go around, hey, if you're coming on to work for us, this is the expectations around it. So as part of their onboarding, so to speak, it's like, hey, here's the expectations of the tool list that's required for, hey, we want you to have these at first year, we want you to have these at second, these at third, these at fourth. So it ends up being about 5, 8, I think it is, a year before tax. So give or take, it's probably end up getting around about $5,000 that they get on top of that. But bearing in mind that it is probably not going to all go to tools in fairness to them. So I think it's about setting the expectations with them. Now, I think a really good indicator of an apprentice as well around the tool side of things is what they actually have. And I think it directly correlates, generally speaking, is if they're not big on having heaps of tools, they're probably not big on the job, to be perfectly honest. There's probably issues around their performance, issues around how they're tracking and how they're progressing around that. So to answer that, there is no actual requirement to force them, you can't force them to do that. You can set expectations though of like, hey, this is what's needed around it. So July each year it goes up. The other thing I wanted to touch on here was just around the different levels. So as per the award, there is different levels of your apprenticeship and different pay rates. So there is apprenticeship pay rates for someone who has not completed year 12. There is an apprenticeship pay rate of someone who has completed year 12. And then there is adult apprenticeships, or commonly referred to as mature age. So the difference between not completed and completed year 12 is just percentages. So for example, a first year apprentice not completing year 12 is 50%, and a first year who has completed is 55%. Now, I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do, but that's the minimum that's required. And then you have your mature age, and probably the main one with, if we go back to I call them junior apprentices. So junior apprentices are mature age. That's it. Regardless of whether they finish year 12 or not, I'm sort of not going to get into that part of it all because it's too nitty gritty for me. I always just apply that they've completed year 12. If I'm being brutally honest, I want to look at just one set instead of two. There's an incremental increase across the 4 years. So it goes up. So first year, then it'll go up at their second year, up at their third year, up at their fourth year. With mature age apprenticeships, their first year wage will sit at a percentage, which is approximately 80% of the award wage, so to speak. And then once they hit second year, it stays the same for their second, third, and fourth year. So that it will rise each year annually with the CPI increase in July, but their second, third, and fourth year will stay rock solid against it all. So pros and cons to having both. We could delve into a whole nother podcast around the benefits of having juniors versus mature age. And look, I think I've seen the spectrum of the whole positives and pros and cons against in both fields. But just being aware of that that's where the costings sit at in regards to their wages. But if I can circle back, the main thing that's been highlighted, I feel here, is that the misunderstanding around the travel time per day allowance, which is separate to any all-purpose, and the start and finish on site allowance. So there is two other allowances that they're entitled to each and every day that you should be aware of. And this leads me to probably my last point here, and it is a little bit surprising, if I'm being perfectly honest, is timesheets. The lack of people asking their staff members to submit a timesheet each week. Now, I look at this in a number of ways. So firstly is that the amount of mental load you're carrying as a business owner to essentially reverse engineer their timesheet each week for them on their behalf. The other one on that is I look at it as like, that's pretty exposing. Like, essentially it's like, oh, I think you did this. And yeah, they could all be all cool and all okay about it. But I think like what you said, Crowe, it's like everything's all cool until it's not cool, right? The other thing around it is then you're putting in a level of accountability and responsibility on the staff members to submit a timesheet in return for, hey, this is what we did this week. You can then allow you to check it off against your schedule to be like, oh yeah, tick, 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 tick. It all lines up at a real base level side of things. So they've got a responsibility and accountability to be like, hey, we've submitted this. This is what we've worked this week. This is where we did it. However in depth you want to go to it all. And then, hey, these are all the allowances that I qualify for, essentially, like tick, 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 tick. Yeah, cool. So then it's putting a level of accountability and responsibility on it. I also think it's teaching your apprentices in particular really good practices and understanding and knowledge. And you're putting yourself at a level of like, hey, this is what you're entitled to. So this is what you get. So just make sure that, hey, when it applies, 100% go for it. It's all yours. And then it allows you to be like, hey, we can process it in an orderly sort of functional manner as well. So I strongly encourage anyone who doesn't have timesheets to implement it within your business. It will take a lot of heartache and stress out of it to make it an admin in an orderly sort of fashion, I guess, an organized way that makes things easier. And I can tell you right now is they'll only miss their timesheet once. Because without a timesheet, how are you meant to pay them? Like, you literally, how do you know? Like, you're going back through a diary, you're checking, I don't know, like you're pulling something. One of the boys was telling me he was checking Google Maps on like tracked their day of like where they went and what they did. And I'm like, man, like you could have been walking the dog or like at football training or something like that. So timesheets is a really big one for me. I think it is a level of accountability, a level of responsibility for your team member, and I think it's like a critical skill to life. Like I've never worked anywhere in my life where I wasn't required to submit a timesheet. So
Do you have timesheets separate to? I only ever had it on my job notes, but do you have job notes and a timesheet, or is timesheet?
Yeah, so they submit a timesheet each week, and that gets cross-referenced against the schedule. So the job cards they get checked against the schedule, and then when the timesheets come in, it just goes, hey, bang, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, paid versus allocated hours, so your labor efficiency check. It's interesting. I remember speaking to a member last week who I'm not saying this staff member of theirs was malicious, but they were finding discrepancies on the timesheet, 41, 42, 40, 39, whatever it is. And he's going back over me. Oh, that's not right. So but that little bit of TLC makes a huge difference. Like if you can save a couple of $100 from, and I'm not saying picking up someone's malicious intent, picking up a mistake. It's very easy to make mistakes, even on jobs. Very easy to make mistakes on a timesheet. I left at 10 when it was 10:25 or 11 when it was 11:30. Very easy. Someone's got to cross-reference this stuff, and it's in the 1%ers you're going to find the big increase. So yeah, if you can double down and care about that stuff, it's absolutely huge. I also wanted to highlight there's a real gray zone where a third year maybe the third year is a weapon, fourth year is a weapon, they don't get a van. And if they've got to buy their own car or they come into tradie land with no car, you're really leaving the door open for another company to put them in a car. And if you're already paying them, $5,000 in allowances every single week, maybe that $5,000 can go towards petrol or something like that. And maybe you can give them a pay rise. But there's a gray area of like, especially the fourth year where, let's talk about billing and pay. Like, let's pay, they're going to go from $28 to $45 overnight, which is weird. It's really weird. Like maybe there's an interim rate we can pick. So paying them maybe for the last 6 months or 3 months of their apprenticeship, you can pick like, hey, we're super stoked with how you're going. We're going to meet your tradie rate is going to be here. We're going to meet in the middle for 3 months. The last month's going to be paid at 70%. I think it's really cool. You can retain a lot of them. Like you don't want to go develop the person that then leaves because you didn't handle it properly. And the car is a huge part of that trajectory as well. Like getting them in a car early sort of locks them in, I think, a little bit. But the other thing is billing out apprentices. So if you're billing out an apprentice at, I don't know, $75, $85 an hour, and then they're going to be 120 in a week. So it's like, well, how can you go to that client and be billing X amount per day today, and next week it's Y, and the output stayed the same, but the amount significantly changed. So it's really interesting discussion and something just worth considering. There's no right or wrong. You've got to sort of play each client how they are. Obviously on quota jobs, not relevant at all, but on cost plus jobs, incredibly relevant. So I think it's just like the overarching comment of this. And to sum up, we are not Fair Work. We do not work. Don't take anything out of this podcast. No, go and check everything. But to sum it up, it's have your finger on the pulse and you need to know this stuff. And if you don't know this stuff, you need to educate yourself. And if you want to avoid sticky areas, then don't go near honey. So maybe the honey is the danger of not knowing this stuff. So let's steer away. Let's educate ourselves and let's put ourselves on the path to above reproach, which is huge. So my wrap up is double check, slow down, make good decisions. What's your wrap up?
So I think if this sets off any alarm bells or maybe questions what you're doing, stop, slow down, have a look at it first and foremost. If you look into it and you find out that you have been underpaying, own it. Call out the situation yourself, meet with the person, double check it all, then sit down with them, have a discussion, and just be like, hey, own it. Look, I'm so sorry. I've made a mistake here. It was, whether it's ignorance, which is probably what it's going to be. I'm going to say 98% of the time. I don't believe anyone to be truly malicious that I know of. So just own the situation and call it out and have that discussion with that person. They'll appreciate it, they'll understand it, and then sit down and explain to them, what they can do and put a process in place. So, like, I'm going to say the chances are that the reason you've missed it is because you didn't sit down and understand it and read it. You didn't communicate it in a contract form, so to speak. So when you employed that apprentice, they weren't aware of what they were entitled to because you weren't aware what you were entitled to. And then, a real sort of fail-safe way of putting it in place is like create a standard for the business of like, hey, this is how we go about it, and don't chop and change it. So find out what works for your business. So if everyone starts on site, that works. If everyone, or this type of crew that we have, they all start here, or this crew starts here, like create a bit of uniformity and an expectation around it so that everyone knows what it is. And if there is a little bit of a chop and change, because that's the type of the work that you're doing, just make sure everyone knows what the expectations are and take control of it. Like, so control people as well to be like, hey, I need Robbo and Dicko, you're on the collection duties this week. You know what I mean? Or this for these jobs sort of thing. So come up with a way that works and control the situation. So, but if you made a mistake, just own it.
Yeah, and just goes to show, I'll double down on my finishing point. In your job management software, in your calendar, whatever you're using, just set up recurring tasks every year. So if it's a van registration, if it's a green slip, a pink slip, if it's something, a policy expiring, if it's June 1st for July 1 pay rises, just set some kind of consistent reminder. And that's the easiest thing to do because it's hard to remember everything, but it's very easy to set a reminder. Peace.
Easy. Cheers.
See ya, bye. That's a wrap on another podcast. Whatever you're doing, don't be too busy to stop and check if you're making money. And above all else, you know the rules, be kind. See you soon.